Hey, I'm Rob Gant with the Goose Creek Gazette and the Berkeley Independent. I'm here today with the Kings of Steam, the dynamic duo, the money team. Ricky Dennis, he covers the Berkeley Stags for the Berkeley Independent. Roger Lee covers Summerville area schools, Greenway, Fort Dorchester. He's got it all covered on that side. Guys, week one is in the books. It was certainly a rainy type of week, but all the games got in except for one that they played on Saturday for you. I guess, Ricky, last week we talked about the Berkeley Stags being able to get on track. You thought that they would be able to get on track on Friday, and if you look at the scoreboard, the Stags, had a pretty impressive performance offensively. You were there to see it. I guess talk about the game from your vantage point.
Well, it was a wonderful game, county rivalry, of course. This is the second game for the Stags, first game for Stratford, but big game, I think, for Berkeley and really getting their offense going. Had a big game from Cam Myers, who plays offense and defense. Had a big game on both sides of the ball. Keyshawn Wicks, phenomenal game. And even their quarterback, you could see that he was a little more comfortable out there in the football field. So I thought Eric Tuller, he's got to be happy with how things are looking for him moving forward, and Coach Robinson was as well. So he's feeling good. He's 2-0 against the county rivalry, which is something he wanted to do, which is to beat the area schools coming here. So I think that they're in a good spot moving forward.
Stags won that game 48-19. I know they had about 3 plays over 75 yards or more. I think they had an interception go back 50 yards for touchdown. Let me ask you this. In addition to it being wet, you feel like Stratford was kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit with it being their first game and Berkeley having already played?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. One thing, Coach Robinson, the advantage you have is getting that one game under your belt was that they could then go back and practice and fine-tune a lot of things. So Coach Robinson knew that after that not so good game against Daniel that they would really need to speed up practice going into because a faster practice really produces better game results. So you can kind of see that Stratford lacked that opportunity, a lot of easy turnovers. There was one stint with even both teams, you had like 5 straight turnovers. So that was contributed to a lot of, I think, nerves from Stratford's and not having that first game experience unlike Berkeley had.
For Stratford in that game, don't want to leave out Mario Anderson. He was a running back for the Knights. He had over 140 yards rushing, I believe. I know he had an 82-yard touchdown run and a 12-yard touchdown run. Kind of tying into what you were just saying about a team not having its legs under it, not having played in week 0. I went to a game on Friday. I saw Cane Bay and Goose Creek, and that was Goose Creek's problems were magnified by the fact that the ball was wet. They hadn't played a game yet, and you could see that Cane Bay had already played a game. They were a little cleaner, had a lot of the first game jitters out. Final score of that game was Cane Bay 22-7. Goose Creek experienced a lot of problems snapping the ball from into the shotgun formation and on some punts. Cane Bay, like I said, had already played a game, so they were a little more sure of themselves. Went on 2 long drives in the first half, one from 88 yards, one from 89 yards. R.J. Roderick capped both of those drives with touchdowns. He's a quarterback. And then in the third quarter, R.J. Roderick scored his 3rd touchdown of the game. It was just a classic case of Cane Bay having a lot of the first game jitters out of the way, and Goose Creek still got some work to do. But it's just, it is what it is. When you have week 0 games, some teams play and some teams don't. How much of an advantage do you think you had having already played a game, and also this field is a little more suited for a team that runs offense that you run?
That's huge. And I hate playing week 0, but when you got a team week 1 that didn't play week 0, it's a huge advantage because, it's first game mistakes. Bobble snap, stuff like that. That's stuff that happens in the first game, and I think that was to our advantage tonight.
Other games in my area, Hanahan fell 28-16 to Andrews. The Hawks jumped out 13-0. Couldn't hang on. Andrews kind of got on track and pulled away for a 28-16 victory. Pinewood Prep blanked Northwood. That's one of your schools. Northwood had under 100 yards offense. They had a little bit of a struggle, but Pinewood's probably a pretty good Skeezer 3A team, and so Northwood was a little outmanned in that one. Timberland. I wonder if Art Craig is in the doghouse. Timberland beat up on Woodland 13-0. His son is the offensive coordinator at Woodland, and Art didn't even let Woodland score. What's up with that? I'm sure Art's wife had something to say to him about that. But anyway, really a great defensive effort by Timberland. Freshman Jamal McKinney, a linebacker, had 9 tackles for the Wolves. And Justin Scott, the defensive coordinator for the Wolves, obviously drew up a great plan because Woodland tries to spread you out. And Timberland really had a great game defensively. Kevin Williams, over 150 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns for the Wolves. Art, shame on you for that in your son's score. Just kidding. And one more, St. John's Christian, led by Mikey Smith, who had over 500 total yards and 8 touchdowns. We pretty much can say this every week about this guy. St. John's Christian hammered Coastal Christian 62-44. That wraps up all the games in my area. Roger, I know that you had some good games in your area Friday and Saturday, so tell us about those.
We did. We had Ashley Ridge took on the number 3 ranked team in their classification, Bowling Springs. Game came down to overtime. Really, Ashley Ridge could have won the game on an extra point kick in regulation. But again, wet field conditions like you were talking about, they had trouble on the snap. I didn't see exactly what happened, if it was a little wide or if the ball was wet. But anyway, the holder picked it up, almost made it into the end zone, but got stopped just short. So it goes into overtime. The playoff rules now, I guess they're just doing 4 downs. Whoever comes out on top, and then I guess if they tie, they go another 4 downs.
Right.
But it's certainly a quick overtime, exciting overtime. But it's just too bad the Swamp Foxes couldn't pull that one out. A couple things that stuck out in that game: Troy Chavez, a wide receiver for Ashley Ridge, had 5 catches for 93 yards and a touchdown. He made some really good plays. Matt Duncan. His completion rate was a little bit off. That probably had something to do with the wet balls, but he passed for 176 yards and 2 touchdowns. Defensively, the linebacking core for Ashley Ridge was doing real well. Rhett Butcher had 11 tackles and forced a fumble. Darius Smith had 9 tackles and 2 fumble recoveries in that game. So it was a good effort against a strong Bowling Springs team. That Bowling Springs quarterback is pretty good. He's really elusive. There was a couple times you thought that they had him in the backfield and he would just slip out of it and throw to one of his receivers downfield. So another game in our area that was played Saturday was Fort Dorchester had its home opener against Colleton County. That went pretty much the way people thought it was going to be. But, Colleton County looked strong the first half. I think Colleton County is a little better team than they were last year. So they've got some teams coming up. They'll be playing in the Low Country. Don't look past Colleton County. They're still not, a power or anything right now. But they did all right against the Fort. Fort quarterback, Carry-On Joyner, passed for 243 yards, 4 touchdowns. Receiver Raekwon Simmons had a bunch of catches, had 6 for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. And running back Drew Parker had a good night. He had 2 rushing touchdowns and 1 46-yard touchdown reception. And a lot thing about those receptions for both those guys, a lot of the yards came after the catch. So everybody knows about the Carry-On Joyner and what he can do, and he does. He can buy you time back there. But they did a really good job in the open field of making cuts and just out racing the Colleton defenders. So that was good to see Fort kind of get back to kind of what we saw them doing last year.
Well, that wraps up week 1. We're going to move forward to week 2. I understand you have a game coming up on Friday. You might be torn a little bit, huh? The Stags taking on your alma mater, the Summerville Green Wave?
Yeah, I might be torn just a little bit. I'm going, they're actually coming to us, quote-unquote, Berkeley. But, yeah, I'll be a little conflicted as my alma mater, the Green Wave, will be facing the Stags. But I'm just as excited as I would have been as I would have been in high school. It's going to be a great atmosphere. Even though these aren't, they're not in the same county, they still consider themselves a rivalry, Berkeley and Summerville. And I can tell you that Berkeley is pretty pumped for this matchup. I'm sure that Summerville is still riding their wave from the Spartanburg game. That was a big win for them, so I'm sure that they're still excited from that. But I think Berkeley has something to prove. I think that they really want to get this critical win for them. And I tell you one thing about Berkeley is that they have some really good playmakers. So if they can get in the open field and kind of shift the momentum, I think that would really work in their favor. And of course, we know that sports at any level, but particularly high school, is all about momentum. And if you can kind of get that going in your direction, it can make all the difference. So if I'm the Stags, that's what I'll be looking to. Of course, you want to do the little things right. You want to stay consistent. But if they can get maybe 1 or 2 big plays from one of their solid runners or receivers, I think that could really work in their favor.
Now it's a good time to swing it over here to Roger. Roger, you covered the Summerville Green Wave. You know that everybody is a rival to some. I mean, everybody wants to beat Summerville because of their tradition, their history. Kind of lets other teams know where they are. So Berkeley's obviously fired up to take on the Green Wave this weekend. You've already seen the Green Wave one time. They scored 41 points in an impressive victory over Spartanburg. Tell us what you envision this week between Summerville and Berkeley.
Well, y'all brought up a good point. I mean, I don't know if there's a team in the state who's had more contests with Summerville on the football field. Haven't done any research on that, but the Berkeley Summerville game goes back years and years and years. So, and Berkeley always gives Summerville their A game. You know, they always get geared up for that. It means something to the Summerville players too, but I think really, you know, Berkeley they would hang their hat on that for the rest of the season and try to use that as motivation. If they play them close or beat that Summerville, you know, they're gonna be happy with that.
Yeah.
I think, you know, Berkeley definitely has a chance. They've got some playmakers. Summerville, their defense is going to be hurt because they've had some injuries, and also they've had some players suspended for that fight that happened in the Spartanburg game. That's not it hasn't been announced yet if any of the appeals were awarded. I think they're actually talking about that today up in Columbia. But needless to say, the defense on Summerville side is going to have some key players missing, so we'll find out what kind of second-string players Summerville has there this year. You know, maybe they don't miss a beat. Maybe they got those boys ready and they'll be fine. But I would like to think that there's going to be some point on that Summerville defense that's a little weak, and those Berkeley coaches are going to be looking for it. If they find it, they look for them. If they find a spot where they can run, look for them to pound that ball. If they think maybe it's a cornerback, maybe they can hit some big plays downfield. Look for them to take their chances there. So, you know, I think it's going to be a good game either way. Summerville does have a pretty potent offense, plenty of weapons. You know, a lot of players had a good game against Spartanburg. And, you know, the kicking game is pretty sound for Summerville. You don't see at least in the first game, you didn't see a whole lot of stupid mistakes. You didn't see any, you know, 5-yard punts or anything like that. So that's good. You know, other than that, I don't know what to say other than it's going to be a good ball game.
Should be, and I think if both of you guys are going to be there and they go to overtime, let's just scrap the overtime between the two teams. Let's just put you guys out there and y'all duke it out like Mayweather and McGregor, and the winner, you know, wins for their team. Anyway, well, I'll tell you what, we'll come back to me, talk a little bit about Berkeley County, and we'll finish up with you on Dorchester County. This week I have two matchups that really stick out to me. Cane Bay, as I just mentioned, they scored a big victory over Goose Creek. They are taking on Stratford this week in, you know, what figures to be a pretty good football game. I think Stratford has improved offensively. You saw that. They had some weapons. You know, they were, you know, susceptible to the big play. And, you know, Cane Bay is kind of getting into a groove here. You could kind of see that on Friday when they just kind of churned up and down the field. Cane Bay, I believe, has won 2 in a row in that one. So Stratford will be trying to end a skid on that. Cane Bay hosts Stratford. One other game that really sticks out to me in Berkeley County, Timberland, Art Craig and the boys, they're going to host Shawn Wright and the Cross Trojans in what is a Berkeley County rivalry that is certainly been a good one here as of late. Cross hasn't won since 2001, but last year the game was really close. And if you're Cross and you've not beaten Timberland since 2001, you know those kids are going to come out fired up. And deep down in their heart, they believe they have an opportunity. I've seen Cross this year. I haven't seen Timberland yet, but I have seen Cross. I do feel like they have a pretty good team, a pretty good nucleus of players. The key there will be, you know, for Cross is not to hurt itself, not to turn the ball over 4 or 5 times, not to let Timberland get in their head. So I would expect a knockdown drag out on that one. For Timberland, Kevin Williams will be a weapon to watch. And for Cross, Nate Walker, who's one of the better players in Class A, I think he's a marquee name to look out for. So, you know, look for a good one on that one. And don't be surprised if Cross, you know, makes it close again. Other games in Berkeley County involving Berkeley County teams, Goose Creek coming off of its loss has to go to Sumter. Hopefully if the Gators can have some things cleaned up, they might be in a competitive game there. The key will be to just not hurt themselves, and they got to clean up those snap issues. Hopefully it won't rain. You know, if they don't, I think they'll have an opportunity to play a little better because teams do improve from their first game to their second. Hanahan, the Hawks travel over to Wando High School. Wando actually impressed me a little bit, clamping down on Conway. I mean, Conway won the game 17-7, but Wando was in a very competitive game there. Hanahan trying to get back on track after losing to Andrews. Let's see here. Northwood Academy is going to host Bethesda out of Savannah. Bethesda is 0-3. Northwood, another one of those teams trying to get on track, lost last week. Bethesda, from what I can tell through Max Preps, was 0-3 and has not really been that competitive with their teams. So not really sure exactly what to expect from them. For Northwood, if you're looking for somebody to hang your hat on, the quarterback is Matt Lewis. He's a passing and a running threat. On defense, I'm going to struggle to say it. I'm going to try not to mess it up. John Todozinski. He's the defensive leader for the Chargers. One more game. St. John's Christian is going to load up the buses. They're going to roll about 90 miles away to Jeff Davis Academy. That's in Hilda, near Blackville. St. John's Christian seems to be clicking on all cylinders, led by their senior quarterback, Mikey Smith. Roger, tell us about what things you have going on over there.
Well, Fort Dorchester has a huge game. They're ranked second in Class 5A. They're going to #1 Dutch Fork, up to the Columbia area. Last year, Dutch Fork beat them twice, including once in the playoffs to knock them out of the playoffs. So everybody on both sides is ready for that game. They're excited about that game.
Me too.
Knowing Coach LaPrade and his staff, haven't seen them play Summerville. They usually have a special player or two that they keep in mind just for that Summerville game. I look for them to pull out some of the stops in this one. It's only the second week of the season, so they're not going to go nuts. They're not going to be. They're not feeling like, oh, if we don't win this, our season's over or anything like that. But I look for it to be a real tight ball game. Dutch Fork's a hard place to play in, hard place to get a win in. But that's if you're up in the Columbia area, I think that'd be one of the games I might be considering going to look at if I was up there.
Definitely a good one for sure.
Definitely, yeah. And I think the Fort defense last week, Colleton only scored once on their on Fort's starting defense. So a lot of people don't talk about that Fort defensive unit, but they have the players that the offensive side does. So they can do some big things as well.
Well, they're definitely going to have to show up. Believe me.
Yeah, Dutch Fork's got a good squad.
All right, what else you got?
All right, we also got Ashley Ridge is hosting Colleton County. Like I say, Colleton County looked better this year against Fort Dorchester than they did last year. So Ashley Ridge is going to have to, make sure they take care of all the simple stuff, make sure they don't get careless, and if they can play like they played in the first half against Boiling Springs, Ashley Ridge should be pretty good. If they make a lot of mistakes, or Colleton does have a quarterback who knows what he's doing, he can throw, he can run. If Colleton scores a couple of quick touchdowns and gets Ashley Ridge down in the game, that changes everything. But I think Ashley Ridge is going to be all right in that one. Also, we have Pinewood is going to First Baptist. They're coming off a big 24-0 win, so the Panthers are trying to keep that momentum going. I don't know much about First Baptist. I know they've given Pinewood some good contests in the past. It is at their place, but I think Pinewood we'll kind of see in the next 2 or 3 weeks exactly what kind of year Pinewood is going to have. So it's a lot of people interested in Skeeza sports are watching that game.
Roger, it sounded like somebody was calling you for some football advice. Well, that is the entire week 2 slate that we have in front of us. I believe it will be another good week of games for the teams that are now playing their second games. I think you'll see some improvement. Well, guys, that is the complete week 2 slate. It's running us into Labor Day weekend. We want everybody to have a good weekend and everybody be safe. Brings me to a little bit of a point, though, because we have Labor Day weekend. We have an early deadline for the papers, and people need to check online at journalscene.com, berkeleyIND.com, and ourgazette.com for complete coverage of this week's games.